Hey friends! Welcome to the next painting in my 30 paintings in 30 days challenge. This is the 10th one, which I must say, I'm proud of myself for continuing on this long. I was kind of expecting myself to, fade out pretty quickly, but I'm really enjoying this. So if you haven't listened to any of the other videos, basically what I'm doing is I'm doing 30 paintings in 30 days. I have chosen 10 animal subjects and I'm going to be rotating through them, painting each of them 3 times. So I couldn't resist choosing an animal skull. I have always loved the skeletal system for any creature. It started at a very young age, and all throughout university, I studied, animals and human biology, and it's just always been a huge fascination point for me. And what's really interesting is that as you start to get used to painting animals, you start to understand why they look the way they do when you actually study their skeletal system. And I find that understanding what their skulls look like underneath does help you to create more realistic animals, especially when you're focusing on the contours and the true shapes and the way that light hits them. It's very fascinating. I personally adore skulls. And so I felt compelled to add one to this little collection in this challenge that I'm doing. So I'm going to be painting a cat skull 3 times. I like this because it also gives me a different texture to paint. So animals, at least the animals that I usually create art of, are usually hairy, they're furry. In this particular challenge, I've painted a couple that have scales, so we're doing fish and snakes. But what's nice about the skull is that it's a completely different texture, and it really allows me to kind of focus on planes, if you will. So even looking at this particular skull, you can almost envision it sort of angularly and focusing on the different planes. So even looking at the forehead, where you do have the suture markings, it creates different planes that catch the light. And this is just such an interesting thing to study. And especially, I've always been really fascinated with the way light basically hits subjects and the way you can manipulate light in your paintings to create some really neat dynamic effects. I've always been entranced by, dramatic lighting in artwork, which is why it tends to pop up a lot in my artwork. And painting this skull really allowed me to dig into that, because you can see how there's going to be a strong light source coming in from the left side there, which is why the left side of the skull is much brighter than the right side. The right side is cast in a lot of shadows, so it gives me an opportunity to play with lots of that contrast. And working with a darker background does wonders for making that brightness pop. And it's about having that balance of contrast, right? So that's why I decided to go with a pretty dark background right off the hop, because I knew the skull was going to be brighter in color. And I just thought it would make it pop a lot more nicely. With this particular challenge, I've had a lot of fun of sort of destroying the paintings, if you will. So you can see on the right hand side there, and as I'm doing it right now, kind of dripping some of my paint thinner onto my wet paint and letting it run down the surface. And it's going to leave a nice degraded trail and just gives such a neat effect. Kind of grungy. I always love that look, but I think it complements this painting style really nicely, especially since I am pushing the colors a lot. So it's a little more reasonable to see something that is a little more surreal. So I've been really enjoying that technique. Sometimes it does make a mess though. I had a lot of fun with the glazing here. I wanted to basically push the cast shadow on the right side of the face, or the right side of the painting, a little more, and kind of using the same purple that you see in the background there. I really wanted to push that and recede it into the background so that your eye is immediately drawn to the left side of the painting where that really bright light source hits. And then after your eye has hit that initial spot, it can travel throughout the rest of the painting. I also wanted to add a little bit more of that grunge factor with the purple, so that's why you can see the very left-hand side of the painting there too. I also receded that a little bit with my glaze so that when you look at this painting, your eye is immediately brought to like basically the top of the brow bone surrounding the eye socket and the top of the nasal bone as well. And it just makes for a very interesting experience for the eye. Well, that brings us to the end of another day in this 30 paintings in 30 day challenge. Hopefully you've enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.